Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing the passport wallet by KM Designs. It's got the magnetic snap. I've actually put my passport in here just to prove that it does fit beautifully, I might add. And then it's got the card slots, obviously for your credit card and stuff. I've just put in my cards because I don't need you to see my credit card. Actually, I don't even own a credit card. So yeah, I have made this one out of fluoro green kangaroo leather. And I've done some top stitching in a contrasting thread because it's easy for you to see, and I just really wanted this because this is for me. I made it for myself. So if you'd like to see how I've both cut this out and then sewn it, stay tuned. Alright, so I've got my templates that I have laminated. I'm using an erasable friction texture. So if I make a mistake or slip, I can just apply some steam and it will get rid of that. And I got my scissors, and this is my fluoro green that I will be using. So I always draw it from the back. That's just something that I do, and I've ruled this line with a ruler. So I'm just going to use that as my base, and I want to get close to the edge, but with leather you want to make sure that it hasn't got any issues right on the edge, like if it's too thin or if it's got a mark or a wrinkle. Because then you don't want to use it, it will wreck your final product. So I'm just going to trace around this. Now I'm not pushing hard with the pen because I don't want to score it in case I draw it wrong. So I'm just being nice and gentle. And all the pieces, it's really good. They tell you how many to cut. So I need 2 of this one. So I'm going to line that up against the other edge here and trace around that one. Good cutting makes for good sewing with these things, so you want to take your time and make sure everything's really precise. If you don't have a friction texture, you may always want to use like a grey lead, which, you know, sounds a bit funny, but it's erasable, so if you do make a mistake, it's not marked forever. And yeah, so I'm just not pushing hard, tracing around these pieces. And then the final one. So you'll notice that I'm putting all the straight edges together, because what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to grab a ruler and my rotary cutter so that I can cut any straight edges. And then I can just round off the corner with my scissors. So I'm just lining that up right up on the line that I drew and slicing just past. I want to go just past my marks to make sure that I don't have to pull it. So if you don't cut it enough, don't pull on the leather because it will distort it. It's definitely not what you want to do. So I'm just cutting all the edges that I can get to without running into anything else. So to do this one, I first wanted to do this one here so that now I can kind of fold this out of the way and cut this up and off. Now I'm actually going to just go a little bit further than I have here, just so I can fold this over, so I'm not going to accidentally cut the wrong line. Alright, so now for this piece, I'm going to use the scissors, because that little straight bit's not really worth it, and then cut the curve. So I want to take my time. If this was fabric, I don't think I would take as much time as this, because if you stuff up, you can just kind of chop it off, and everything has seam allowances. Whereas the cut that I'm doing is the final design. So there we go. So that's one piece. And now that I've cut that one off, I can rule this part without running into anything. You just want to make sure you line it up really well. Right, and so then for the, so I'm going to fold this one up And I'm going to rule the base of this one here. All right, so that's probably all the slicing and dicing I'm going to do. The rest I'm going to do with scissors because they're all curves. Now, if you're really good with your rotary cutter, feel free to cut these with it. I do not trust myself enough to get these curves wonderful. So I will be using scissors. So there goes. There's another one. And this one, we can just cut the curve and cut it off at the same time. You do want to use some really sharp scissors for leather. So I'm not opening my scissors the whole way because I don't have full control when they're up at the other end. So I'm just using kind of the front half of the scissors. Okay, so I've now got, so I need to round off these corners because I just rotary cutted these. If you wanted to, you could make all the corners super sharp. You don't have to round them off at all. You could also cut them at a 45-degree angle and have like cut off corners, which would also look really cute. They do that a lot more for men's stuff. They just cut the corners. So they're still straight edges, but they're just not pointy because pointy edges are more likely to get damaged. All right, so I've cut all of those pieces. So they are the pattern pieces, but you also just need to cut a little square that's going to go over your magnetic clasp. So I'm just going to cut a 1-inch square. Chop that bit off. And I always cut, I don't try and cut the other side of the ruler. It never works for me. So I'm just going to rule a little 1-inch square. There we go. And add that to my pile of pieces. So now let's go to the machine. So I'm going to start with my magnet. I'm going to install that first just so I don't forget. So I'm going to turn over my snap tab part and I'm just going to lay my template over it. Now I have actually punched a hole in the center of the circle where it goes so that I can just lay it on and then draw the line. So I can just scribble on there and I get my little mark. So now I'm going to use my gasket and I'm going to line it up and put the 2 lines where the hole needs to go. So now I've got 3 marks. I'm going to take my craft knife. If you don't have a craft knife, I highly suggest you invest in one. They're like a couple of dollars. They're never expensive. It doesn't matter what brand. It is the best way to do this. Because it's the leather, I personally would not be using scissors to try and cut that hole. On fabric, it's different. It's okay because it's more pliable. But with the leather, I don't think it would work as well. So then I'm just going to stab my magnet through, put the gasket on the back, and then fold it out like so. Also, on the tab, we always use the smaller piece of the 2. So your female, which is the thicker one, always goes on the main body of anything you're making as a general rule. So now we can fold that in half and that will be your snap tab. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of double-sided tape to hold it in place just so it doesn't shift while I'm trying to stitch it. Now I'm going to be using a 3 3/4 stitch length. Because I want it to be a lot more decorative, and I'm using black as well as I'm using a black magnet. So this I'm actually making for myself because I own a passport but not a cool passport wallet. So I thought I'd just do one for myself, and my favorite color is green, so hence the fluoro green. So I haven't put the tape all the way down because it is going to fold onto itself. You really only need it on like half. So you can measure approximately half and then stitch it down. And And I also didn't put it on this end because I thought it might be more difficult to put where the magnet is. So now I'm just going to fold that in half, making sure that I get that nice and even. And then just go down both sides and squish it. So now the double-sided tape holds it together beautifully. So I'm going to stitch from this side because this is the side that is going to be the top side. And I'm using a new thread too. So I found a new thread supplier. I will put a link to them in the description box, but I love my new thread. So I'm a little bit obsessed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge, and I'm just going to do 3 holes and then go back through that first hole. Then I'll turn my machine on and stitch along that edge. Now remember, with leather, if you make a mistake with the holes, you can't take it back. So make sure you go nice and slowly. Especially on that curve, because you want it to look schmick. And so then I'm going to go down the other side. And then back stitch. Just 2 stitches. Beautiful. Okay, next up I'm going to install my other magnet piece. So again, I'm going to flip it over to the back, and I'm just going to line this up and draw my little dot, and then put the gasket over the top like so. Draw the lines. Stab my knife through. Now I can get replacement blades for these too, so you only really have to buy this part once, and then you can just buy replacement blades. But you can buy them everywhere, so you can get them from like the reject shop, I'm pretty sure. Alright, gasket on, push them out. Now I'm going to stick this over the top of that to avoid any issues. So I'm just going to grab my glue. Give me 1 second. I'm going to use my finger because I just am. So I'm going to smear the glue all over the tab side. And then wipe the rest of my pants because these are my tracky dacks and it's fine. They've got a hole in them anyway, so I think they're going to have to go in the bin this week. But you should not do that. You should wipe it on a scrap piece of paper or something. But I have just emptied my bin, so I literally have nothing else. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that aside and let it dry. And continue on with the rest of the sewing. So you can use leather glue. I'm using Mod Podge to stick that down because I know it's going to work. But you can get leather glue. You could use PVA glue. Probably not super glue. I would use anything but that. Alright. So now I'm going to top stitch all of these pieces along that curve edge. The pattern also says that if you wanted to, you could put some edge coat on there. But I'm really enjoying the kind of raw look, so I won't be doing that. So. 2, 3 holes and then back through the first one, and then we're going to stitch around. Now take your time with curves, and I find I'm always better at sewing them one way more than the other. So whichever curve you're better at, stitch it that way. And then I'm just going to go through the previous hole and out. So if you're better at curves this way, stitch it that way. I am clearly not. 1, 2, 3 holes, back through the first one. That just locks all your stitches and makes it look neater than like a really big lot of back stitching. So slow and steady wins the race. I never stitch fast with leather because you have to be very deliberate with every hole that you make. Okay. And I'm chain stitching them as well. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm just not cutting them off. That is a very deliberate thing that I'm doing. And my final stitch is always going to be as close as I can in line with the edge stitching that I'm going to do, so that it doesn't look like I've got floating stitches. So they should all join up nicely. So now I'm just going to chop off all of those tails. That is some good looking thread. I'm very excited by this thread. Okay, so now we've got our beautiful top stitching. So we're going to take, we should have one smaller pocket. So we're going to take one small pocket and one large pocket, and we're going to put the small pocket behind, and we're going to do it 1/2 inch down. Now, for the purposes of this video, I promise I won't eyeball it. I'm going to grab a ruler. So I'm just going to line this up along there, like so, and then clip it down. So you're going to clip it down both sides so that it won't move when we're about to stitch it. You also make sure everything's lined up nice and straight. So now on the back, it looks like this, and the front looks like this. So we want to find the center. So again, with our ruler, and I'm going to use my friction texture pen because I know it's going to come off. So 1/2 of that is there and there. So we're going to rule a line, but you also want to make sure, so where the bottom of the pocket is, you can feel it. You want to come up 1/4 of an inch from the bottom of the pocket. So there's the bottom. So I'm just going to put the ruler on and put another dot and rule that line so that I can see where I'm going to stitch. Now, because this is an erasable texture, I could actually just rub that off if I wanted to. But you can see I've kind of made a little crease so you can see the pocket there. And then I've gone 1/4 of an inch up. So now I'm going to stitch that line and then a few others. So I want to make sure I've got a long tail, because I knew it was going to do that. So I'm going to go stitch, 3 stitches, and then back through the first stitch. Then I'll turn my machine on. We're going to stitch all the way down to the bottom of that line. Like so. Then we're going to do 1 stitch to the other way, and then we're going to stitch up to there. Then we'll do 2 stitches, one that goes to the center line, one to the other side, and stitch down. So we get this 3 stitch look. And then across. And so then I'm going to lift up my foot and go back through the furthest stitch, and then again to lock that in. Chop off my tails, and then I'll come bring it to the camera for you so you can see. So we've got down, across, up, across both, and then down, and then finish it all off. Okay, so now we just want to lay our pockets. So I suppose you can have them any which way you like. So I'm going to put that one there like this, and then use my clips to hold it all together. I'm actually going to be stitching it from this way. So I'm going to flip it over to make sure that everything's lining up. You'll also notice I did not clip off these corners, and that was a deliberate move, which I probably should have explained why it was a deliberate move. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that everything from this way looks 100%. So once I stitch that corner, I can just trim off any excess. So if you've watched some of my other videos, I do that a lot. I cut one, especially the Nora. So I cut one exactly, and then I cut one kind of roughly so that I can trim off the excess and make them both perfectly even. So again, we're going to line this pocket up. And I'm lining it up from the outside. Grab some more of my clips. As many or as few as you need. There's no right or wrong when it comes to clipping. And don't worry, I haven't forgotten about my tab. I'm just doing one thing at a time and then I'll put it through. Okay, so we want our tab, and this is the best way to remember this. See, that's how you want your tab. So we're going to stick it in that way. So we're just going to slot that in like that. Make sure that it's lined up in the center. Move that out of the way. So that looks good there. This is also an opportunity, if you've made yours too long or you don't like it that way, you can shove more of that in like that and it will sit flatter. But I don't want it that flat because it won't fit anything. So I'm going to pull it back out. If you're not going to put, fill it full of stuff, if you're just going to put the passport and not necessarily use the other slots, then that would be a good way to make sure it's still going to sit closed nicely. Okay, so I can see from this side, I've got a little bit of a gap there. So I'm just going to maneuver the leather to sit where I want it. Same on this side. So you just roll it until it sits where you like it. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I'm quite happy with that. So now I'm going to top stitch it. So you can start wherever you want. I plan on starting right here, because why not? It's also at a fold point, so you're less likely to see the start and finish. Now, because I'm going around in a complete circle, I'm actually not going to back stitch this one, because I can just run over the stitches again when I get the whole way around. So, slow and steady wins the race. I'm still just doing 1/8 of an inch. And then when I get to the corner, I'm going to slow down and pivot it properly so that we get nice corners. Pull my clips off as I go. I never want to go too fast with leather because you can't undo any hole that you make. I'm sure there is a way. I am unaware of it though. Alright, so you also want to go slower here because we're going over all of that extra layers of leather. But your domestic should still be able to do this so long as you're using a thinner leather. There. Alright, so now that I'm on the last little bit, I'm going to hold these tails out of the way so they don't get caught up. And then I'm going to stitch through 2 of the holes and then back into that last one and we're done. So snip them off really, really close and then you can just melt those ends if they need it, which this one does. Don't hold the lighter on the leather too much, you might melt it or burn it. So there we go. Super cute. And then it opens up and you've got your slots. I hope you enjoyed this quick little tutorial and... Oh, actually, no, I'm not finished. I nearly forgot. We need to trim off these rounded edges. Like so. There we go. Now we're finished. Now, if your leather slipped at all, you can just go along and trim that up. And if you wanted to, you could put an edge coat on the final product here as well.